Hello, this interview is one in a series of interviews that the Special Collections section of the State Archives of North Carolina is conducting with the American Indian Heritage Commission to record the lived experience of indigenous communities in North Carolina. These oral histories will be part of an archived series of documents and will be made available to the public. Today is Tuesday, December 20th, 2022. It is 3:30 p.m. And this is an interview with, if you could give me your full name, please.
Otis Lowry.
And can you spell it? Spell your name, please.
OtisMegelLowry.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This interview is being conducted for the American Indian Heritage Commission Oral History Project. The interviewer is John Horan. I've got a couple of folks here with me. If you two would like to identify yourselves.
Curry Bird, Director of the North Carolina American Indian Heritage Commission.
Quinn Godwin, Associate Director.
Excellent, thank you. This video interview is being conducted in person at Dr. Lowry's home. The first question is an easy question. Why don't you tell me where and when you were born?
I was born December 12, 1923, 11:50 a.m. in Lumberton, North Carolina, which is in Robertson County.
Terrific. Yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Pardon?
Tell me about yourself.
In how much detail?
As much as you want to give. This is about you.
Well, I was raised on a farm. My father was a teacher, farmer, a school administrator, and a minister. And he bought a farm in Deep Branch in 1928, and we moved there, and that's where I was raised, on that farm. There were 10 of us children. The oldest one was Glenn, Eulalia, then I was next, and then Garnet, M.L. Jr., Daphne, Brantley, Shirley, and Maxine. I think I got them all in there. And as I say, Truett. I forgot Truett. That's the other one. And as I say, we were raised on a farm, tobacco, cotton farm, so we had plenty of work to do on the farm. My elementary school was at Deep Branch, and my father was principal and teacher there for my first 4 years, and then the next 2 years I spent Union Chapel, and then back to Deep Branch where I finished high school, and from there I finished elementary school, and from there to high school in Pembroke. And I went to high school in what was then known as the Cherokee Indian Normal School. It had high school and first 2 years of college. That's where I went to high school for my first 3 years. My fourth year, a new high school was built next to the college, and that's where I graduated from high school. And that is in 1940, and the school then became, instead of the normal school, which was 2 years, it became the four-year college. So my senior year, as I say, was at the new high school. From there, I went to the college for 1 year. For 41 school year, I went to the college there in Pembroke. Then, because of the war, and I decided to go to work in Baltimore in a shipbuilding, Bethlehem Steel. We built victory ships and landing barges. So I worked there until 1943 when I was inducted into the Army. So from there I went to I was inducted at Fort Meade, Maryland, and they issued us all winter clothes, including a heavy overcoat. So we figured we were certainly headed north to Alaska or someplace. We put on a train and all blacked out, and 2 days later, we ended up in, guess where? Miami Beach, Florida, with all winter clothes. So we were stationed there. I was in Somerset Hotel right on the beach for basic training. Spent 3 months there in basic training, and from there I sent for Fort Logan, Colorado, which is just outside Denver, to engineering operations school. Went there for 3 months, graduated from that, and I was assigned to Fort Walkerfield, Kansas, Beast 29 outfit. And so my job there was, I worked for the Captain Hall, who was in charge of the training for the squadron I was in. I worked for him as a clerk, and was there for 3 years, and then from there to Guam. And my job on Guam was keeping record of the missions flown by the B-29s during the war. And I was there about a year before the war was over. And then I was discharged in 1946. And so then I had always wanted to be a general practitioner, a family physician. And of course, being Indian, a Robeson County Indian, I could not go to the University of North Carolina, did not admit Indians. No state-supported school admitted Indians other than the Pembroke Normal School. And I knew if I went there, I would have trouble. Even if I graduated, I'd have trouble getting credits into any medical school from the Pembroke School. I couldn't go to the University of North Carolina because they didn't admit. So I chose Lynchburg College, Virginia, which had a good pre-medical program. And so that's where I went to college. Got my degree there in chemistry as a major and biology as a minor. Applied to medical school, and I applied at I applied at University of North Carolina, although I knew they didn't admit Indians from Robeson County. I applied to University of Virginia, Johns Hopkins University, Emory University, and I don't remember now whether I applied at Duke or not. I'm not sure whether I did or not, but I applied to those 4 schools, and of course, all of them had, like most of them would say that were admitting, say, 50, and they'd have applications for as many as 1,000 or 1,500, so the competition was tough. And, of course, I was rejected by North Carolina because of the state law, and that worked against me being out of state, trying to get into out-of-state schools, being out of state. So I was rejected by all of them. So I decided to teach a year. So I taught school in Schuyler, Virginia for a year. I applied to med school again and rejected again. Then I decided to go that I would probably end up going into education. But I had taught a year and the pay wasn't very good. I decided to go to Detroit and work in a car factory for a year to save money. And if I happened to get into med school that year, I'd have some money in addition to my GI Bill. So we went to Detroit. And by the way, I got married. I better put that in there. I graduated from Lynchburg College in June of '49, and I got married on June the 17th of that year. I sure didn't want to leave that out. But back to Detroit. We worked there a year and made, my wife worked, I worked, and we made good money. So we saved up right much money, and I applied to med school that year. And that year, I got called for an interview at the University of North Carolina, which surprised me. And so I drove down, and I was interviewed by all the members of the committee, and all of them, except one, told me that I was well qualified. Well, first of all, each of them, what we talked about was the Indian situation in Pembroke. That was the big subject. But anyway, they all ended up telling me that I was well qualified to study medicine, and that they were going to vote to admit me. Well, I felt sure that I was in med. Went back and I told my wife I was surely that I was going to be admitted because they had told me that. Well, a few weeks later, I got a letter from Dr. Hedgepeth, who was head of the committee, telling me I was rejected again. So I shot off a pretty heavy letter to them and demanding to know why I was rejected, and telling them. But in any event, I got a letter back from the dean, and he said that I was right, that the committee voted to admit me to med school, but when it came to his desk, he had to reject it. and he didn't tell me why. The committee had voted to admit me, and he didn't tell me why. So my first thought was to to bring suit against the university, and then I thought again. I said, no, that's not the right thing to do. Just accept it for what it was and go ahead and give up on medicine and take my losses there and go into education. So I applied to the University of Virginia and was accepted there in the School of Education, and I got my master's degree there in school administration. And the month before I was getting my degree, I got a letter from the dean at the University of North Carolina Med School telling me that there was a vacancy for the class of 52 if I still wanted to go to med school. That was certainly a big surprise to get that letter from the dean telling me that. And but it put it was a big decision for me to make because I went to college on the GI Bill, and I had worked in Detroit, as I said, and saved money and all, and it got me through the year at the University of Virginia and used up all my GI time. I had enough to get me through that, but I had used up all my GI Bill, had no money. At that point, I was broke. I didn't know anything at that point, but I was broke, married, had a child, and I knew that my father couldn't afford to help me with med. So it was a difficult decision for me to make, and how was I going to finance my schooling, medical school, and but I thought and discussed it with my wife, and we decided, well, that's what I had always wanted to do. Go ahead and tell him that you accept, and then we'll get out and see if we can find the money for you to go. So that's what we did. I wrote back and told him I accepted it. And so we got out and found the money I was able to get money from the Medical Care Commission. I borrowed money from the Medical Care Commission, from the University of North Carolina, from my brother, my wife's brother. In other words, I started med school, broke, and borrowed money to put us through med school. My wife and a daughter, of course, she didn't know it, but that she was living in poverty, but we got by. And like I said, I had borrowed money from my brother and my wife's brother and every place I could borrow it. And my last month in med school, I didn't have money to buy groceries for the next week. And I was going to go home and see if I could, maybe my father could help me out that much. And so I was going to go home and see if I could borrow $500 to help get me through the last month of med school. Then when I got the internship, I'd have a little stipend from that. Got on the elevator going down from the hospital, and happened one of my classmates got on with me, said, "What you going to do the weekend?" I said, "I'm going home to see if I can borrow enough money to get me through the rest of the school year." And he said, "How much do you need?" I said, "Well, I'm going to see if I can borrow $500 from my dad." He said, "Don't worry about it. I'll let you have $1,000. That was a classmate. And we were not close friends either. He was just a classmate. He said, "Don't worry about it. I'll loan you $1,000. You said you want $5. I'll loan you $1,000, and don't worry about paying it back. If you pay, you can pay it back if you want to when you get out and practice, but don't worry about it." So that was the first thing I paid off when I did get out, because that was a lifesaver. So anyway, I got through med school fine. And by the way, when I got to med school, I found out early after I got there that a black student had been admitted to the medical school in '51, the last year that I was rejected. Dr. Diggs was his name, and that Floyd McKissick was admitted to the law school the same year, and that they both got in by suing the university. And so that's probably what, I'm sure that's what it opened it up for me, that I was able to get in. And anyway, I interned at Watts Hospital in Durham. And then after the internship, I opened my medical practice in Franklinton, solo practice, and I practiced there for 3 years. Had a very busy practice, and it was, night work, busy day and night. So I decided to join Dr. Warren in Spring Hope. We formed a partnership, built a clinic here in Spring Hope, and I moved here in 1960 and practiced medicine here for 53 years, 3 years in Franklinton, 52 years here. So I practiced medicine a total of 55 years till I was 89 when I finally retired. That is some part of my history. I may have left some things out. Glad I didn't leave out the fact I married your mother.
Yeah, that is actually very that's extremely comprehensive, and I have a lot of good follow-ups for you here. I think I'm going to try to expand on some points, and so let's go all the way back to growing up in Robeson County. I want to know the first thing you mentioned the school. Tell me a little bit more about the school. What did it look like? Where was it? Tell me that.
Which school now?
The when you were a kid, elementary school.
Okay, elementary school. It was a 4-room school. The first grade was in one room. Second and third grade was a room. Fourth and fifth, another room, and the sixth and seventh, the other room. My, as I say, I started school there in 28. My dad was principal and he taught the 5th and the 6th grade. My 1st grade teacher was Madabel Jacobs. And who was a very good, in fact, my favorite teacher in all of elementary school was her.
Why?
Madabel Jacobs. Well, I guess she was almost a second mother. She had in her classroom. She had a sand table. I can remember that we all loved it to get around that sand table and build. She would build different scenes for different seasons of the year, and well, she's just like a mother to all of us, and I just loved. Everybody loved her.
And what was it like having your dad as a teacher and the principal?
Well, my dad was stern disciplinarian. And any teacher that had a problem with a child, they sent to him. He was the disciplinarian for the school. And you didn't go to him but one time. You didn't go to him but one time. Because that was it was tough at the time, but it was great. And I don't know how many teachers I've had that taught under my dad that said that how much they enjoyed teaching at his school, because there was no discipline problems, because he was strict like he was. But and he was like I said, you didn't go to him but one time.
Did you ever go see him?
Yeah, one time.
You remember why?
He took. I don't. But he took care of me just like he did the rest. He didn't hesitate, and I got it at home too. I remember at home, one time I didn't feed the mules. Well, that's only one time I didn't feed them, too. He took care of that. But he was, we didn't like it at the time, but I'm sure glad he was strict like he was. We need some of it in the schools today. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's your elementary school. Take me through middle school and high school again. Give me more detail about middle school and high school. Give me more detail about those things for you.
Well, when I came along, the elementary school was 1 through the 7th grade. And high school was 8 through 11th. There's only 11. There wasn't a 12th grade it was 11 grades. And the high school, when I started high school, it was at what is now the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. At that time, it was Cherokee Indian Normal School. That school, back in about 1835, I think to be exact, the state legislature named Robeson County Indians as people of color. And you know what that meant. And that, of course, is why they weren't admitted to the interstate school. And they built a school for the Robeson County Indians in 1887. It was the Croatan Indian Normal School in 1887. It was built in Pates, which is about a mile west of Pembroke. And that school moved in 1909 to the present location of Pembroke State University, and it became Cherokee Indian School, their Cherokee Indian Normal School, and that's where I went to high school. They had the 4 years high school and 2 years of college. My and I don't know whether I answered your question or not. Is it?
Yeah, I'm interested in your high school experience. So you're right on the right track answering that. I am interested though, as a quick follow up, why the different names? I think that's good to get on the record. Why was it called Croatan and then eventually Cherokee? Why the different names?
I don't know that I know but the legislature it's mostly political, I think. The legislature is the one that came up with from Hector McMillan, I think, was the one that led in it. And they thought the Indians in Robeson County were derived from the Croatan tribe, and then it's gone from that. We've been known as Croatan, we've been known as Siouan, Tuscarora, Cherokee, but the two main ones was the Croatan. And then when it was moved to Pembroke, around 1913, it was changed to Cherokee because I guess the political feeling that's where they were from. But there's also there was some Siouan, some Tuscarora, and now it's Lumbee Indian is what it is now. And I think there's still a group up around Maxton that claim to be Tuscaroans, I think, even today. But the name changed, and then it was changed to Lumbee because it's right on that derived from the Lumber River. It's where that Lumbee came from there. But it's mostly a political thing.
Yeah. And so during your time in high school, this is a situation where what's the sort of ethnic makeup of the school, the racial makeup of the school?
All Indian, all local Lumbee Indian. No, and we had this 3 school systems: white, Negro, and Indian. So the makeup of the school was all Indian, or supposedly.
What do you mean supposedly?
Well, it's I'm out of the mainstream on the Indian situation in Pembroke, the Lumbee Indian. I'm not sure we've really worked it out. Like I've done my ancestry in pretty good big detail. And you know, I know they've. In other words, I'm from that group, but I'm not a member of the Lumbee tribe. So they've got membership. I haven't joined because although I'm from the group and I consider myself Lumbee, but my whole feeling about it is that we need to take the major names and run the details on all and come up with what we really are. We really aren't true Native American Indians, in my opinion. But the makeup of the high school that I went to was made up of the Robeson County Indians. That's what I will call it now. Designated that by the state of North Carolina. Our teachers in high school, most of them had gone out of state to get classic teaching certificates. Most of them just had the normal 2-year normal training school. Our teachers. My first year in high school, my favorite teacher, of course, was my science teacher, Elmer Lowry, who encouraged me to go into medicine. But in answer to your question, the makeup of the school racially was Indians of Robeson County, which are now known as the Lumbee Indians.
And when did you graduate again?
1940.
1940. And immediately after, what did you do, did you say?
I went to 1-year college there at Pembroke. Went to college for 1 year, and then went to Baltimore shipyard.
And so I imagine, well, I was going to ask you about school and when the first time you went to a school that was integrated, but I'm more interested in the shipyard. I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the shipyard presumably had people who were white, who were African American, and like yourself.
Right.
And so that experience, how different was it from your previous experience, and what did you think?
Difference in day and night. Difference in day and night. In Pembroke, you could trade with a white. All the businesses were white, most of them. Very few Indian businesses at that time. You could trade with them. You couldn't go to a restaurant. They wouldn't serve you at a restaurant. They wouldn't serve you at a drugstore. Drugstores had fountains. They wouldn't serve you there. If you went to the movie, you went up, the Negroes and Indians sat in the balcony. And it was that way when I left Pembroke in 1941. And like I said, it was different in night and day. Going from there to Baltimore, to the shipyard, I was on racially equal terms with everybody. But not so in Pembroke at that time.
Did it ever change in Pembroke?
Oh, yeah.
When?
Yeah. After the war. After the war is when it began to change.
And you're talking about World War II?
Yeah.
So after when it started to change. Is that what you said?
Huh?
Is that you said it when it started to when it began to change at that time?
Yeah.
Okay. How long did it take?
Well, it's still occurring. Isn't it?
Yeah, it could very well be. I think that you might be onto something there. So, so that I just wanted to make sure I got that contrast between the shipyards and living in Pembroke. So, but before we go down that road too far, I wanted to ask you about your mom. We've talked about your dad. Incidentally, what were their names?
Cammy Pars Locklear. Mother had only elementary education. She was raised in a family of 10. She was the oldest girl in the family. And she was, like I said, she only had elementary education. She was dropped out to help our mother look after the rest of the large family. She married my dad when she was 18, she was actually 18 going on 19 when they got married. But although mother only had an elementary education, boy, she had a PhD in motherhood, caring for her children. The love that she showed for us children and the impartiality that she showed to her children was something to behold. And education-wise, she was far more educated than I was when I finished high school. She was far more educated than I was when I finished my first year in college at Pembroke. And she was very intelligent lady, very easy to approach. And she's the one that we all went to if we had a problem. And my mother was, well, just all that the mother word indicates. And I always Just think of the word mother, the refrain I used to hear, M is for the many things she gave me. O is mean, O is that she owes me all I own. T is for her tender, sweet caressing. H is for her heart of purest gold. E is for her eyes that shine so brightly. R is for the right she bids me do. Put them all together, they spell mother, the word that means the world to me. That was my mother, who baked the best pound cake you'll ever taste.
So your mom obviously had a big impression on you. I'm interested, could you give me your most memorable piece from her, the thing she taught you that stuck with you for the longest, maybe?
Well, she encouraged me, and I'm sure she encouraged all the other children. She knew the difficulty that we faced as a race. And I know my mother always encouraged me. And she knew early on when in high school that I expressed an interest in medicine and wanted to be a physician. And she encouraged me that you could be whatever you want to be. Make up your mind and go for it. And she was a good advisor. And I consulted with my mother even to the day she died. She was far, far, far more educated than her formal education. She got good training someplace, I guess, from her mother and daddy.
And now how about your father? What was his name?
Martin Luther Lowry.
Martin Luther Lowry. All right. And what would you say his greatest lesson for you was?
Well, it was along the same line. He encouraged me to the importance of making good grades in school. He pushed me along that line. He and his brother, James, who was the principal of the high school where I went to school, they like when I went to high school, first year I went to high school, the high school agriculture group always went to the state fair. And I found that out because my brother was in agriculture. So when I went to high school, that's what I signed up for because I wanted to go to state fair. Signed up for agriculture. So that afternoon, Daddy's brother, who was J.R. Lowry, was principal. Before he was down there, and he told my daddy, he said that Otis signed up for agriculture, which means he's going to miss general science. And he needs to be taking general science instead of agriculture. So he caught me right off there. And I'm glad he did, because if he hadn't, by the time my dad found it out, if the principal hadn't gone and told him the time he found it out, it'd been too late for me to switch. And then I'd have lost a year, but I needed to be in general science if I wanted to go to to medicine because I had to have general science to progress on to the other science courses, and I would have been set back there.
That's good looking out, I think, by your uncle and your dad there. I think. Did you ever make it to the state fair?
Yeah, I got to go with that. Yeah, my brother was still in agriculture, and he went, and I got to go with him.
So you got the best of both worlds.
Yeah,
that's great. Good. So we'll leave the schooling aside for a second, and we'll talk about shipyard, and we'll talk about your time in World War II. So in 1941, you go up to the shipyard. Why did you choose that route and not directly in to the military?
Well, tell you the truth, I didn't want to go in the military. And Glenn, my oldest brother, and my daddy's brother, Calvin, both had gone the year before to work at the shipyard, electric arc welders in the shipyard. And so that's the reason I went there, because they were there. That's the reason I went there. And instead of, I didn't go in my service until I was drafted. Now my older brother, he volunteered. And, but I didn't go till I was drafted because I didn't want to go. I'll be honest.
I appreciate the honesty, and I understand that. So, did I hear you right? You said you built Victory ships
Yeah.
What did you do specifically to build the ships?
Arc welder, electric arc welder.
How did you get that position as opposed to any other?
Well, I trained for it. When I first went to Baltimore, I had to go to school, electric arc welding school. When Glenn and Calvin they went to Charlotte and took the training for electric arc welding. But I went to Baltimore and took the training there and was trained to electric weld. And that's what I did, because they made good pay.
Oh, okay. Do you have any sense of how many ships you worked on?
How many? Well, I was only there a year and 3 months. And I worked on 3 different Victory ships and 2 different landing barges.
Nice.
We had a little song we sang at the shipyard. We build and sail 'em, we'll never fail 'em. The Victory fleet will soon defeat the foe. We'll build a bridge of ships beyond compare. We'll soon be able to walk from here to over there. The world is cheering, the skies are clearing. With the Victory ship, let's go. Row, 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 row.
That's terrific. So when would that song come out? You would sing it while you're working, or what's
and it's celebrations when they'd launch the ship off the launching pad, and they break that bottle of wine against it. We'd sing it then. Or if the president would come, we'd sing it to him.
So
Roosevelt would come occasionally.
So you got to see Roosevelt.
Oh yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, it's great. Always great to see the president. Yeah.
That's true, but what about this specific president? What about Roosevelt? Was there a lot of people around?
Yeah.
He come with a lot of people?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that is. I'm not sure there's too many people who could say they've seen Roosevelt anymore. That's great. Wow. So 1941, and then you're building ships until you said 1943,
Yeah.
and then you were drafted.
Yeah.
Do you remember the day you got drafted?
March, I think I was drafted, I believe it was March the 7th. I'm not sure. I believe it was about March the 7th and then went in about the 15th. Somewhere around the middle of March.
Wow.
Of 43.
And what did you think? How did you feel about being drafted?
Well, I wasn't really happy about it. And they were getting some off to, deferring them that was working in the shipyard. And I tried that route, but no, I got drafted. So I had to go. And I'm glad I did now. And I was inducted at Fort Meade. We got on a bus in Baltimore and went to Fort Meade. And we got off the bus. We were met by the sergeant, and you policed the area from there to. They took you right to issue your clothes. You policed the area as you went, picked up cigarette butts and all that. He put you to work right off. That's discipline.
Yes.
That's discipline.
Yes, sir. What branch would that have been?
Well, I ended up in the Army Air Force. Army Air Force. And when I got that, as I say, I ended up in Miami Beach. And I finished my training. I decided I wanted to go to flight school, and I applied to that, but I was rejected.
You ever find out why?
No.
Oh. All right. But we took you. You took us through at the beginning. You took us through your stops along the way, ending up in Guam. You said.
Yeah.
How long were you there?
A year. A year. Not quite April, March. Not quite a year. I went there in April of 55.
45.
45. And I was discharged. I got back in March of 40. I was a little less than a year. 11 months, 10, 11 months.
That's right at the end of the war then.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Okay. And so you were discharged from there?
Yeah. Well, I finally discharged from Fort Bragg, but I mean, I was on the way to being discharged. I was sent back to Fort Bragg where I was discharged.
And that's something you wanted, or would you have stayed longer, or anything?
No, I was offered to stay longer. I was, in fact, when the war was over, I was a staff sergeant, and I was offered tech sergeant if I'd stayed and go to. And if I had stayed, I would have gone to Japan. And I was offered tech sergeant. And then I would have been in a year master sergeant. But no, I was ready to get out. I didn't like service.
And it was at this point that you met your wife?
No.
Later on?
Well, I met her. Right after I got out.
How did you meet her?
Well, when I got out of service, I got out in March, and I worked at Fort Bragg. Got a job, worked at Fort Bragg, and it was during that March, that summer, that I met Francis. Go back to a story I might tell about that. My high school, or my elementary school teacher, the 5th and 6th grade and principal, was Wayne Maynor. And he was married to Lucy. She was a Sanderson. And I know she came to our school a time or two, and I remember at that time I thought what a pretty lady she was. And then that summer they had ball games up at the college they had ball games in the summertime. And I went there, and in walks Wayne and his wife, Lucy, and another man and his wife. And I was struck by how pretty this other lady was, too. And come to find out, they were sisters. Wayne and Lucy, and the other one was J.A. Sampson and Zeddy May. They were they were sisters, Zeddy and Lucy. And then, lo and behold, my 3rd year in high school, ran into a pretty Sanderson girl, Virginia Sanderson, a sister of them. Well, I had a crush on her, but she didn't have one on me. But I did. I dated her once, I believe, once or twice, and we wrote back and forth. But then she got married, and then I tell you all this story to get back to the girl I married as their sister, the baby sister to all 3 of those. And I met her Zeddy and J.A. operated a store in Pembroke, a grocery store. And my mother and Zeddy were good friends. And my mother went with mother in there one Saturday. And Francis, I called her Dale. Francis Dale, that was my wife's name, came in, and that's where I first met her. And I arranged, told her I was coming up to see her that afternoon, and she did. And she agreed, and I went. And that was the beginning of that. And then I was getting ready to go off to to college a month later. So we dated a time or two. Then we had a correspondence by mail. We dated by mail for 3 years, and then got married when I graduated from college.
Dating by mail. I
Yeah.
think that's something that today nobody does. But that's really an interesting story. And so, would you come back to see her, or would she come visit you in college? Because at this time you're in Virginia, is that right?
Yeah, she came to visit me at Easter, the first, I believe. Well, anyway, she came to visit me at Lynchburg my first year there, and that was the only time. We'd see each other at vacation when I was home. was about it.
So that's a good segue into your education now. So let's focus on that for a little while. You know, Lynchburg, by this time you're removed from Pembroke, and you're removed from, you know, we talk about that night and day, you know, at the shipyard versus in Pembroke. Where was Lynchburg on that kind of scale for you? What was that experience like for you?
Well, it was there was no no racism at all at Lynchburg. I was right there with all the rest. I was on equal terms with all there. Yeah.
And you said you majored in chemistry.
Right.
Why did you pick chemistry specifically?
I was that was for. I took what was recommended for pre-med, and I which was to take all the science I could, and of course when they had a placement service, we had to take a test, and they give you they tried to place you where they thought you best fit. And when they gave us exams, and then you went to before the group that decided what was best, what they thought was best for you. Well, I was kind of disappointed when they said they told me I was signing up for the wrong thing, that I'd never make it through the science part. And he said, you're best suited for mathematics. You're good in mathematics, and you best switch your major to mathematics. And I said, because you won't be able to make it the science, the chemistry. And so I didn't pay them much attention. I went ahead and signed up for what I wanted. I signed up for the chemistry and all. Well, I may as well go ahead and tell you the whole story. First chem exam, 2 weeks, I think, or 3 weeks. First chem exam I made. $59. 59. And I said, oh boy. He said, they must be right. They must be right. And boy, was I disappointed. So the next day, we got our papers back one day, and the next day, the professor went over the exam with us and told us what poor grades everybody made, and most of us were returned vets in the class, and the highest grade was 69. That was the highest grade on the exam, 69, and I made 59. And so then I went and talked to the professor after that, and he said, "Don't worry about it. You just stick with it." And so I ended up making a B on that course that year, and then made A's and B's the rest all of my way through school, and did fine on even organic chemistry. Did well on all of them. So I don't know.
Yeah, and so you go through this. When did you graduate college? When did you graduate from?
49.
Okay, and so 49, and after that you go to Detroit.
After that, I taught 1 year.
1 year. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
taught chemistry.
where?
Schuyler, Virginia.
Okay.
That's between Lynchburg and Charlottesville. A soap mining town.
Why there?
That's where we both got jobs. There was opening. We both were able to get jobs there.
And you stayed there for a year, and then you decided to go to Detroit to work for the
Right.
automotive to save up some money.
Right.
So I think it's time to get into the medical school part and all of that discussion. You had a great rundown of your experience applying to medical school, but I think there's some more detail we can get out from that. When was the first year you applied to medical school in general?
1949. The year I graduated from Lynchburg.
And that didn't work. And then when did it finally work? What year was that?
52.
Okay, so 3 years of trying. Did you try every year?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Yes, sir.
Sorry?
Yes, sir.
Was it always your intention to come back to this area to go to medical school? Because you were in Detroit, you could have stayed in Michigan or in another northern state for medical school.
Well, I would. I wanted to go to my own state university. Is where I wanted to go. But I would have gone any place that would have admitted me.
Why was your own state university so high on the list?
Well, one, it was cheaper than going out of state, much cheaper. But then, well, mostly that, really. And of course, and I had reservations about going after the dean admitted, because you know what I thought was, now are they setting me up to flunk me out to justify the fact that I wasn't qualified to start with? That's the thing that struck me. And but it wasn't so, because when I got there, everybody was just as nice to me as they could, including the dean. He even invited us into his home. I had a meal in his home. Everybody was just as nice to me as they could be, and I think the members of that committee were extra, because I had a number of them in my class that kept checking on me if I'm doing all right, and if you need any help, we're here to help you. They were just as nice to me as they could be.
Why do you think that was?
Huh?
Why do you think that was?
Well, I think it was because that the faculty knew what I had gone through to get in there, and they didn't agree with. Like they voted to admit me to the school, and the dean turned it down. The dean, he had a conversion because of the state law forcing him to do it. Because when I came to Spring Hope and joined the medical society, Nash County Medical Society, there was a doctor that had connections with this university that knew about the problem I had, and he told me. He said, "There's no question about it. You were not admitted and you kept out of medical school because you were a Robeson County Indian." And he told me that the dean was a segregationist until the law changed. But he certainly changed because he was as nice to me as he could be while I was in med school. And I have nothing but praise for the school. I have no hard feelings at all about what I went through against the university. None at all, because I understand it. And so I have no hard feelings about it. Although the letter I wrote to him didn't indicate that. I did that on the spur of the moment, and without thinking. And when I sent a copy to my dad, and of course I had already mailed it when he got his copy, he called me up and told me not to do it. He said, "You're not accomplishing anything." And he was right. My letter was misplaced. So I understand why I had the difficulty getting in, and I have no hard feelings against the university at all. In fact, I've supported them every year since I've been out, the Loyalty Fund.
Yeah,
and will continue. So I've been supporting them for what now, 60-some years.
Yeah, when did you graduate?
In 56.
Just wanted to. So, at the beginning of that, with the dean, the discussion of the dean, you were concerned. You said you were concerned that they were letting you in to set you up to fail.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what do you mean by that? What were you thinking? Why did you think that way?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that I really know, but that's what I thought. Because at the time, that was just my feeling at the time. That maybe that was what they were doing, but it wasn't. That was just a thought I shouldn't have had.
Did you ever interview for any other school, by the way?
Yeah.
Which schools and how did that go?
The interview I thought went all right. I was interviewed at Emory University, Johns Hopkins, and the University of Virginia. I think I interviewed at all of those. Interviews went all right, I thought, but I didn't get admitted, so they didn't. From that standpoint, they didn't go too good.
Right. You mentioned that you could have sued.
Yeah.
Why didn't you?
Well, first of all, I didn't have any money to do it, and second of all, that is just a thought that struck me, and even if I had the money, I don't think I would have. But obviously that's what got me in, because Floyd McKissick and Diggs, that's the way they got in, and that opened it up for me. If they hadn't, I'd there's no question in my mind. If they hadn't, I wouldn't have gotten in. I'd never been a doctor.
When did you learn that they did what they did?
When I got to the first year I was in med school.
Did you meet either of them?
No. I didn't, because Diggs was still there in med school, and no, I never met him. I really didn't. And no, I didn't meet Floyd McKissick either.
So how did you find out that that's what happened?
I don't remember. I just don't remember how I found, but I know I found it out my first year there. I knew that Diggs was there, and I knew he was black, and he was there a year ahead of me, and so how I don't remember how I found out that they sued to get in, but I know that's what they did. That's public record now.
Yeah, absolutely. 1 second. Sorry about that. Yeah, and so how did your family feel when you finally got into school, into medical school?
Who? My wife? Or?
Everybody. Start with your wife. Talk about your wife. Talk about your parents. Talk about your siblings. Everybody.
Oh, they were all happy and glad. Of course, my wife knew we were going to have a tough go. She knew we discussed all that in detail. Whether when I was deciding whether to answer the dean. After I told you about the problem we had financially, and my wife knew that. She knew that, and she knew we had a child, and that it was going to be tough. But she encouraged me every step of the way, or I wouldn't have done it. She was right there with me. And of course my family, and like I say, my father would have helped but he couldn't. He had 10 children that he got us all through high school, and beyond that, we had to be on our own. Now, he could have, I'm sure, and would have mortgaged his farm if it had come to that, but I would have never done that. I've never asked him to do that. But like I say, if I hadn't been able to, even I accepted admission, if I hadn't been able to, the thing that saved me, it was the Medical Care Commission that I went to, and they agreed so much that I wouldn't have to pay back till I got out of med school. And of course, that wasn't enough to carry me. So I went to the university, and they loaned me money. And then, as I say, my brother Glenn loaned me money, and Francis' brother Margolius. That's the things, that's where the financing came. Plus my classmate that saved me the last month. That's where my financing. And when I got out of med school, I had a big bill to pay, which I eventually paid. It took some time. But But as I say, Francis was right there every step of the way. And of course, my family, they were all happy for me that I was getting a chance to do what I wanted to do.
Did you ever have a sense of what the rest of the community that you grew up in thought about it? Were everybody on board, or did some people think that this was, thought differently or anything
No,
like that?
I think everybody was on board, happy with it,
And
as
then,
far as I know.
great, yeah. And then you mentioned the one classmate who helped you in the last stretch. What were your other classmates like? Were they accepting? Were they not? Were they nobody think about it? What's the deal?
They were all except they voted me. My classmates voted me to be on the student council. So that spoke pretty well for what they thought of me. That I was put on there by my classmates. So they knew I was a Robinson County Indian, and there's no problem there. Absolutely none.
And what about, so we talked about the deans, and we talked about the dean, and we talked about the other members of that committee. How about other professors? What are your memories of the professors? Who was your favorite professor? Why during your time in med school?
Well, my all-time favorite professor in med school was Arthur London, who was a pediatrician. And in fact, that's why I went to Watts Hospital to intern, because he was on the staff at Watts Hospital, and he was a professor at the university, a pediatrician. And he was my all-time favorite. Next to him was Garrison. But Dr. London was my all-time.
Why?
Well, he was a good lecturer, for one thing, and he was he was some professors can make things much simpler and easier, and he was one that could do that.
That's a great reason to be relatable, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so after med school, you did the internship there for 1 year?
Right.
And then after that, you have a decision to make on where you're going to go. What decision did you make, and why?
Well, Dr. Warren, who is from Spring Hope, and I interned together at Watts Hospital. And we kind of discussed then eventually joining each other in our practice. And he was going to come back here to his hometown to practice. And there was an opening in Lewisburg. A doctor had, in Franklinton, the doctor had died. And there was an opening there for a physician. And so I elected to go there because it was close to here, only 30 or 40 miles. And then Dr. Warren and myself, eventually joined together here.
What county is Franklinton in?
Franklin.
It's in
Franklin County.
Okay. Did you ever think about going back to Pembroke, to back home, to practice?
I thought about it, Francis didn't want to go back there. And I didn't either. So we didn't.
Well, was there? I'll ask. If there was a particular reason why.
I'm sure there is, but some things are best left unsaid.
Okay. Fair enough. So in this town and in Franklinton, they're both small towns.
Yeah.
How did your experience growing up in a small town help you administer medicine in these small towns?
Well, that's what I always wanted to practice in a small town. Where, like, I grew up in a small town, that's what I wanted to practice in a small town. Because in a small town, you get to know everybody. You know everybody. And that can be good and bad, you know. You know all about everybody, and they know all about you. So, but that's what I wanted, and both places, Franklinton accepted us great, and Spring, and so did Spring Hope. We were. Franklinton knew I was an Indian from Robeson County. Spring Hope knew I was an Indian from Robeson County. In fact, when I came here, Dr. Warren, when I came here, there was in the doctor's office separate places for whites in the waiting area for whites and colored, separate, you know. And in Pembroke, there's a place for colored, white, and Indian through 3 school systems. Here there was 2 school systems. Well, when I came, Dr. Warren told me, he said, well, now, I'm white, you're an Indian, and he said, now if we can get us a colored nurse, we'll have everything covered. And we'll do away with the separate waiting areas. I said, well, that sounds great. So that's what we did. He had a colored nurse, Rachel Wiggs. Remember Rachel? She was with us one of the best we ever had. And so that's what we did. We opened up the waiting area, and we had a white doctor in there and a Indian doctor over there and a colored nurse. Well, she actually wasn't a nurse, medical assistant. And besides that, we were Republicans. So we were told we'd never make it in Spring Hope with that combination. They said, that's okay, all we got's the service. If you don't want the service, that's fine. That's all we got. All we got is the service. But that's what we were told by some of the higher ups. But anyway, it didn't pan out that way. We did fine.
Obviously, because you're here for, you said around 50 years practicing in this town.
Yeah.
So that speaks to one side of it, but you're told that you wouldn't make it. That is interesting to me, especially in a town where you say everybody knows everybody, so they all know about you. it seems like everybody was pretty accepting, but was there ever a time when you felt threatened?
No. No, never. No, even there was racial division in this town at that time, but that cleared. That cleared.
It's really an inspirational story to have, especially the part about integrating the waiting room. You have integrated medical staff, so why not integrate the waiting room? I think that's really something in it, and to happen so early. Because when would that have happened?
1960.
1960. Wow. Yeah, that's really fascinating. And so, when did you stop practicing medicine again?
I opened my practice in 1957 in Franklinton, 1957. July 1957.
And when did you stop?
There?
No,
here, December 31st, 2012. December 31st, 2012, yeah.
That's coming up on 10 years here.
All right.
Wow. Okay.
All right.
And were you full-time the whole time?
No.
Okay.
In 1994, I cut my practice back to morning, just morning, 9 to 12 in 94. So the last 18 years, I just practiced 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Part-time practice.
Mm-hmm. And how come?
Well, at that age, I had to start drawing out of my IRA, and I was drawing more out of that than I was making practice medicine. I had been pretty lucky with the stock market, and so I practiced those years more for the lady that worked for me than I did for myself. To give her employment, and I didn't want to. I didn't have any real hobbies, and I enjoyed practicing medicine, enjoyed the contact. So those 18 years, I wasn't working for the money. I was just working to have something to do.
And did you pick up hobbies during those 18 years? You said you didn't have any other hobbies before that.
No.
But since then?
Not much, no.
Really? Okay. All right.
No. My hobby now is riding a golf cart.
And playing too, or just riding? And playing as well, or just riding? No, both. Okay. Good. All right. So, this is kind of maybe an overarching question to wrap up this discussion on your medical practice. Where did you really develop your passion for practicing medicine?
When I was a kid, I always heard my mom and dad talk about Dr. Earl Lowry, who was one of the first Lumbee Indians to go to med school. He graduated from Vanderbilt University and was the surgeon in the service. He stayed in service for, 30 or so years as a surgeon. And that's where I first developed my interest in hearing them talk about him. And then my science teacher, general science teacher, my first year in high school, Elmer Lowry, he encouraged me to take up medicine. He had a brother that was a doctor in Tennessee, and when he would come home, Elmer would invite me over to his house for lunch to meet his brother that was a doctor, and he encouraged me to. So that's where I got the idea and the encouragement, and it stuck.
I should have asked this when you were in the military. Was there ever any avenue for you to try to become in the medical profession there?
No.
How come?
Well, I don't know. Well, yeah, I said no. I don't know. When, they placed me, and, I don't know. I never thought and tried that. I might have been able to get in the medical corps. I don't know. I may have been able to get my best friend in college, Carl Campbell. That's what he was in the service. He was in the medical corps. He was a lab technician in the medical corps. I might, if I had pushed it, gotten into something like that in retrospect, but I don't know that I even. I didn't consider it. I know I didn't, but I may have. Yeah. But anyway, I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad things happened as they did, because otherwise I wouldn't be where I am. You wouldn't be interviewing me if there'd been some different change. If I had done that, we wouldn't be sitting here.
It's possible.
And if I hadn't had all that problem getting in med school, all these things that were impediments, God had a plan for me, I guess. He put me where it's best for me. And he's kept me here for 99 years, and I'm thankful for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in those 99 years, what's your biggest achievement, would you say?
Biggest what?
Achievement.
Marrying Frances Dale Sanderson. That's the best thing ever happened to me. I wouldn't be here without her.
Yeah. And what would you say you're most proud of?
My children. Jan. Cammy, Fran, my grandchildren, and one great-grandchild who is something. That's what I'm most proud of. And I'm proud that I was able to reach my goal of becoming a physician and practicing medicine for the years I did for all the right reasons. My goal in the beginning was to serve others. That's what I did. And This town, Spring Hope, had been good to me. Wonderful place to raise a family, and I'm proud of all that.
It's excellent. That's excellent. At this point, I'm going to see if anybody has any follow-up questions. So first, I'll ask. Oh, okay.
I have one in particular. First of all, as a graduate of UNC, I appreciate what you did on behalf of Indians, future generations who are just accepted almost every year. I believe there's a Lumbee at UNC Law almost every year, including me, back in the 2011 to 2014. So I thank you for that. But I wanted to ask about the letters. Were you able to save any correspondence between you and the dean, or?
No, I wish I had, and I don't know why I didn't, because I saved the letter I wrote to Dr. Hedgepeth after I got rejected. I said, I've got that letter, and why I didn't save the ones from the dean, I don't know. I wish I had. But they're public record, I'm sure. I mean, should be. But I didn't. I didn't save them.
And my last follow-up is throughout this whole story you've been telling us, you referred to Indians in a particular way. You wouldn't say Indians in general. You said the Indians of Robeson County. So with the dean writing those rejection letters, do you think it was generally an Indian thing, or particularly that you were from Robeson County as opposed to another tribe like the Cherokee or the Waccamaw-Siouan or the Coharie?
Well, I think it was the Indians of Robeson County because of state law, right? And in 1836, by legislation, they declared us people of color, right? And then through legislation, we've been Croatans, right? That's the way the first school, Croatan school. We've been Croatan. We were never, by state law, Siouan. We were never Tuscaroran. We were Cherokee, right? And then Lumbee, based on the Lumber River, all by legislation. And the problem at getting in Chapel Hill was the Indians of Robeson County, as I remember it. Now the first ones there in the university itself was only in 1951. The first one there was Cecil, Cecil Lowry, and then Genevieve Lowry. They were admitted there in 1951 into regular college, and I was the first one in the med school. Now, if I don't know that a Cherokee or any other tribal member, I think some have been admitted to. I'm not sure of that, but I think that some were admitted there before that. None in the med school, but in the university itself, I think, but I'm not sure of that.
That's great. Thank you. It's great information.
Being the first American Indian to graduate from medical school at UNC Chapel Hill, were you ever involved in any of the national Indian medical?
Maybe.
Were you ever involved in any of the national Indian medical associations?
No, no.
All right. Yeah, at this point, I just want to ask you something I'm going to ask, I think, everybody in these series of interviews that we're going to do. And it's this question of, what do you think is the most pressing need for the Indian community in general?
Well, from my standpoint, the best thing is in general, not just for the Indians of Robeson County, but in general, is to get over the idea that the government owes us something. Get over the idea that the government should do all of these things for us that we should be doing for ourselves. I think in the long run, put very simply, as President Kennedy put it, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. The sooner we get a nation that looks that way, we can start paying off the national debt. We got a $31 trillion national debt, right? This town just got $800,000 grant to refurbish a railroad station. It's now serving as a library. We got no railroad in town. $800,000. This town. Multiply that by every town in the United States. We begin to understand why we got a $31 trillion national debt. That's where we've got to wake up. That's what we've got to wake up to. And I didn't just come to this feeling yesterday. This has been my feeling for many, many, many years. We're asking too much from the federal government. Isn't nobody in this country that can't make it if they make up their mind to make it and go for it. That's what I did. I made up my mind and went for it. And we'll go my way through it, and so can we got too much of dependence on the government rather than the other way around. I don't know if that answers your question, but that gives you an idea of what it.
Absolutely. And so so that was a general question, and now a specific question. We talked about the fact that your birthday was a week ago, 99 years. What's the secret?
Peanuts, peanut butter sandwiches, pound cake, 2 ounces of bourbon and 3 ounces of ginger ale at supper time. A loving wife, 3 great children, 3 great grandchildren, and 3 grandchildren, 1 great grandchild, and an apple a day.
That's great. Is there anything else? I'm about to conclude. Is there anything else you want to add to the record while we have it open?
I don't know that I can think of anything right now that we haven't pretty well covered.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.